Triel, and I would like to talk about Pondering God. My audience is just Christians. You know, we've all heard the Sunday morning message about meditating on the Lord, and we've all sat there in the audience and thought, well, I do. I mean, I meditate on Him all the time. I think about church, I think about my friends at church, I think about my music. I mean, I have like so many worship songs on my iPod that I could listen to them 24/7 and never listen to the same one twice. And I mean, I have my verse a day app, so I think about God all the time. I really do. Well, there's a big, huge difference between thinking about God Himself and thinking about the things of God, the things that we associate with Him. And you might be like, oh, well, but He's invisible. I mean, how am I supposed to think about someone that I can't see? Well, I understand that question and I understand that concern, but there's a big thing you have to understand. When someone is invisible and they know that you cannot see them, that you are unable to view their face, usually when they're aware of that, they describe themselves. Lots of little details, visuals, things that allow you to imagine what they would look like. You see, what you do with that, it depends. Either you hope to see that person again someday or you don't. And if you don't hope to see that person ever again, well, why remember their description? I mean, it doesn't make any difference to me if I know what they look like, so I'll just forget about it. I mean, it's just words they said, it's no big deal. But if I hope to ever see that person again, whether I like them or I dislike them, if I know that I'm ever going to see them, I will take those words, those descriptions, those visuals, and I will memorize them. I will think about them. And you'll do this too. You've done this before, I'm sure. Maybe a pen pal or someone else that you just have taken what they look like in words and pictured it in your mind like a novel. And as you've memorized those visuals, you begin to see a face. And you hope that when you see that person face to face, that you will recognize them. Now you have to understand, God's given us a lot of visuals. God's given us so many details about who He is. I mean, let's take His looks, for example. He has talked about who He is as far as God Almighty. His big, flowy white hair, the fire that comes out of His eyes, the sword of truth out of His mouth, His bronze arms. I mean, come on, ladies, bronze arms. Who doesn't want that, right? Let's see. What about His plan? I mean, He said He knew you before the foundation of the earth. While we were yet sinners, He still died for us. I mean, that's pretty awesome. What about His actions? You know, if someone asks for wisdom instead of riches, He'll give them both. If people neglect the widows and the orphans and the foreigners, He'll wipe them out. What about His promises? I mean, He's given us some pretty great promises. He promises to keep knocking on the door of our heart continually, never stopping until we open the door and let Him in. To sit and be ourselves, to eat and be relaxed and enjoy His presence. So what about His desires? I mean, He says that He desires our hearts. He desires the praises of His people. He says that our prayers are like sweet-smelling incense to Him. What about his emotions? He calls himself jealous, angry, a lover of our souls. He has emotions too. I mean, we were created after him after all. How often do you think about those things? How often do you sit and just think about who he is? If he were to look at you right now, would you recognize his face? I mean, the things of God are fine. The things that are around us, they're fine as long as we keep them in their place. But if I'm going to call him my best friend, I certainly had better know who he is. I'm going to give you a challenge. My challenge is for you to log off of Facebook, turn off that TV, take out those earbuds, and think about him. Meditate on him. Not the Sunday school version of him, but how he describes himself. Holy and awesome and just beyond our imagination. Anybody got any questions?